What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. Bye, singing dog. Bye, goal.
I pronounce you.
Bye, wedding ceremony.
Stop. At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sin's Chat Corner. It's a very special event this evening because most of you do know that I do not usually broadcast for an evening broadcast unless it's someone very special or very important. Tonight, that criteria holds to my guest more than I can even begin to describe. I'm so excited, and it's not very often that I get this excited. I mean, I love what I do, but this is a very exciting interview. Director John Gallagher is going to be our special guest this evening at 6 o'clock Central Time, which it is right now. So before we get him on the air, let me just cover a quick few show details. First of all, I want to remind everybody, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time tomorrow, Sisters of Grace is going to come on our show. These are the nuns that have established a new website in New York City, trying to do a bunch of new things about climate change and control. So I'm very excited to be speaking with them. Thursday, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time here in Sin's Chat Corner. Friday, I'm taking the day off. Yeah, right, because I never take the day off, but I am taking the day off to try to get my storefront ready, of course. And as we all know, I'm going to start shooting my teaser videos on April 12th for my new film. And then, of course, we're going to start the actual cameras rolling at the end of this month in April. So very excited. To those of you who haven't checked it out as of yet, Brazen Biker Babes is the name of my movie. It's a working title. Let's not even pay attention to it for right now, but please go check it out. Please like it, and please support it if you can. So without further ado, I have John on the line, so let's get rolling and see what we can find out about Mr. Gallagher.
Miss Cindy, how are you?
Hi, John. Oh,
how
I'm
you
nervous.
Doing?
How are you? I'm
Why are you nervous?
Oh, my God.
Why, you want to be in the movie?
Deal. I can't even stand it.
No.
If you would cast me, I'd be like, yay, I'm right here. Hello. No, you're a big deal. You are
I'm
such
a big deal in my parents'
I can't
house.
even stand it. Oh, my God. You are a big deal. Huge deal. Huge. We're going to cover so much of you. You are going to be, like, sick of yourself by the time that we're done.
Oh,
so,
terrific.
Get comfortable. I have very good questions. At least I think they're very good questions. So we'll see. I kind of want to start off with one of the things that you and I had talked about actually in our Cardinal telephone call between the two of us.
Yeah.
It involved a statement that surrounded this thesis that I'll share with everyone else, which is my belief is an exact and an accurate assessment of actors, both part and parcel, involves studying both their past and prevailing performances. And I think I mentioned that to you on the phone.
Very much so.
I believe... Oh, yes. The identical ideology applies to thespians in all sorts of areas. So, of course, obviously we're going to direct it right to you, John. Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit of some of your earlier endeavors and then compare creatively, competence-wise versus then and now, the changes that have gone on, what you took from the past that kind of brought you to the present in terms of who you are now.
Well, you know, I, as a kid growing up outside New York City, that was before the days of video and Turner Classic Movies, but local TV did play a lot of pictures, Hollywood classics from the 30s and 40s. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents who, were in their prime during that era, so I got to know these films. We used to... We moved quite a bit when I was a kid, and I was always the new kid in school, but Gary Cooper and Spencer Tracy and Clark Gable and John Wayne, they were always my friends, no matter where we lived. And so I fell in love with these pictures. I actually went so far as to tape record the credits off the TV, write them down on an index card, and then write down interesting shots, thoughts about the movie. And I'm talking 7, 8, 9 years old. My parents would let me set the alarm clock for 2 o'clock in the morning to watch Citizen Kane or the Marx Brothers, and without realizing it, without planning, I gave myself an education into our film legacy. Now, some people call it movie trivia. It's not trivia, it's history, and if one is an actor or a writer or a filmmaker or aspires to do any of those things, you have to know what came before. Just as if, if you're a writer, you read Shakespeare and Fitzgerald and Angelou, and if you're a politician, you study, Roosevelt and Kennedy or whoever you study. We have to know what's come before. History repeats itself. There's nothing that hasn't been done, really, in terms of, story-wise. The technology certainly changes and makes it easier, if anything, for anyone to create. These days, it's insane. When I started, you needed, film and laboratories and negatives and flatbeds at Steenbeck's, and today, a friend of mine had a sensational success at Sundance making a feature film called Tangerine that was shot on his iPhone. So it is a whole new world, technically, but at the end of the day, you still have to care about the characters in the movie, and also for many other reasons. I tell the actors that I teach and the directors that I teach, this is a very difficult business, as we know, but on a day that's not going so well, watch Giulietta Messina in Fellini's Nights of Cabiria, and it will uplift you. So the study of our film legacy, of our vintage cinema, it entertains us, it informs us, enlightens us, and inspires us. And, there's very few things in life that do all those things, and certainly a great motion picture, can do that. So no, I feel, and in fact, I even, it's funny, I wrote some speeches for Robert Osborne, who is, one of the great hosts on Turner Classic Movies. He was presenting an award to Lauren Bacall, and a thing that I wrote for him, I've heard him say it many times on TCM, which is, if you've never seen the 1932 Trouble in Paradise, directed by Ernst Lubitsch, it's an 80-year-old movie, but if you've never seen it, it's a new movie, and it's true. And I'll tell you, some of these pictures from the early 30s, what are now known as the pre-code films, before the production code began to be enforced, they're as adult, they're as intelligent, they're as risque as anything today, and with a lot more style and wit than many pictures today. So I'm a big believer in that, and I will also say, as a final bit of inspiration, that I directed a kid in a movie, and he knew nothing about vintage cinema, and I turned him on to the movies of Preston Sturges, The Lady Eve, The Miracle of Morgan's Creek, and he happened to be at an event, and Martin Scorsese was there, and he went up to him, very shyly, and they started talking, and Preston Sturges came up, and here this kid could talk about Preston Sturges to the great Marty Scorsese, and Marty said, "Look, if you can get yourself out to Vegas, I'll give you a line of dialogue in Casino," and he did. And if this kid did not know about our collective cinematic past as I taught him, that never would have happened. So, the great directors, the really great directors, they know about, these movies. I mean, Scorsese's a walking encyclopedia. Coppola, all the great ones, know and get inspired by what's come before.
Definitely. I agree 100%, certainly. I have a side question to that you just brought up in conversation there. I'm just curious to ask you as a director, because I'm about to embark on this and I've been questioning this same thought myself. obviously in the advent of all this new technology, like you're saying, for instance, you can shoot a film off of some of these simpler devices. You obviously started 30-plus years ago. So now 30-plus years ago as compared to right now, technology, camera usage, everything is so different. Do you find that the more advanced, if technology advances and continues to do so, does that make it easier or more complex in some ways? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Actually, in my opinion, Cindy, it's easier. As an example, certainly, I'm considered an actor's director. I love actors. Let's face it. I mean, they're the actor is up on that screen, and back shooting on film, after 10 minutes, the camera load runs out. You have to stop, no matter where you are emotionally in the scene, and stop and reload. Now with digital videography, you never have to do that. I mean, you rarely have to. You just keep shooting. I think that it's really a matter of how much of a purist are you in terms of, look, I agree with Tarantino and Christopher Nolan, I mean, 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter. I mean, film is film and gorgeous and wonderful, and those guys, have the luxury to do that in their pictures. But when you're, kind of scraping together the funding and trying to save, you're forced to save money here, save money there. I'm talking about, in my world, the New York indie world. We have to use these digital cameras that are, gorgeous. I mean, the reds look beautiful. I mean, you have to be, a mathematician to use them, but that's the cinematographer's job. I don't have to worry about that. Right. So I do think it's made it easier, if only because it's less expensive. Back when I did my very first couple of movies, where you have to buy raw stock, you shoot it, you have to send it to the lab, it has to get processed into a print that can then be used for editing, then that print has to be conformed to the negative, then we make prints off the negative, and sometimes your first print, there might be some technical glitches, and you have to make another print. Then there's the whole sound, the sound aspect of it. So it was much more expensive. Today, as I said, you can shoot on a digital camera, you can edit on a computer, mix, and come out with a professional looking product. But again, at the end of the day, it's really writing, directing, acting. For me, that trumps everything. It's more important than than everything. All those lenses and all that, all the technical stuff is there to serve the writing, the directing, the acting. There are some filmmakers that that's the other way around. They're more interested, I think, in the technical, and that's cool because they're doing certain kinds of films. Like Terrence Malick, who I love, makes these just incredible, metaphysical treatises, and they're that are technically just astounding, but they're not exactly heartfelt. They're not, they don't strike your heartstrings or your passion, the way, the way that a Terms of Endearment or a Frank Capra movie, would do. And in a Frank Capra movie, like It's a Wonderful Life, look at what that movie, the emotion in that film, and that's, considered an old-fashioned, certainly, using, 35 millimeter film, and, just some of the emotions in these pictures from, the 20s and the 30s. I mean, there's a 1921 Charlie Chaplin movie called The Kid, where he rescues little Jackie Coogan from the social workers. It'll rip your heart out. It is just, and this is silent. I mean, it's silent in terms of no dialogue. There was always music and sound effects. Silent movies were never really silent, but that's a silent picture, and it just hits every button emotionally. So again, it really boils down to that, to the writing, the directing, and the acting, in my opinions. And there's also no reason, I used to know, 25 years ago, a lot of actors who would just be sitting around complaining about, they're not getting discovered like they expect, it to just drop into their lap. Well, today, these actors are creating their own work. They're doing short films. They're doing web series. I know a lot of wonderful actors, young actors, new actors that are doing just that. And you get together with some friends, and it's like the old Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney movies. Hey, gang, let's put on a show. And they're doing it with the new technology. Now, this also means there's a heck of a lot more product out there. That means that for an independent, you need to show your films first at film festivals, and the competition is just fierce because there are so many films now, that are submitted. Some of these festivals are getting, they get thousands of submissions, and it's tough. You really have to keep plugging away at that because, as I said, that's where an indie film can build, a reputation. You essentially create a resume for the film. I, rather insanely, have 4 films that will be world premiering in the next 6 weeks, 3 features and a short that at a variety of festivals, and it's essential that they play these because we're hoping, for a couple of nice, press quotes would be good, an award would be great, and that helps you eventually when you're making your distribution deal. So that's on I guess on the negative side, the technology has made it, that there's a lot more competition. But in terms of being able to do the work, absolutely no doubt about it. There's feature films that I know of that have been shot for feature films, 90 minutes, that have been done for $10,000. Now, back in the day, you couldn't do, a 35 millimeter film for $10,000. That $10,000 might just be your processing the film, cost, let alone pay, the crew and cast and editing and music and so forth. So, but I think ultimately I'm happy about it because I've been able, my little company has done. We've been involved in 10 features and 20 shorts just in the last 7 years. That never could have been done had we been shooting on film. We did all that digitally. So it's also good because the more that an actor can see their work, the more that a young director can see and learn that way. Like when if I executive produce for a new director, I give them input on the script. They can take it or leave it. I give them input on their footage. They can take it or leave it. I give them, some tips about, production, how they could cut a corner here without cutting quality. I give them my comments on the edit. Again, they can take it or leave it. And then I help them get into film festivals, which they always take. So it's good because they can learn. Sometimes some of them, I might say the smarter ones, do listen to the voice of experience. That was a very important thing for me on my first movie, was I listened to the most experienced people I could find, and learned so much from them. I mean, that's just a natural thing. I think that is just a key to success. Is solicit. There's plenty of people that are successful who are more than happy to share. They just have to be asked.
Correct. I agree, 100%. I'm very, very lucky. Like when I called John up and I was like, John, I need to know about this and this, and you were just so receptive and so kind and so sharing and so welcoming, and that's nice to see, because you don't always get an opportunity to see that. I want to switch gears on you a little bit.
Sure.
I want to talk about now, Emerson, of course, was your college of choice, which I gather had kind of furthered your familiarity with film. So, as a freshman pioneer,
it was more of a social experience, to tell you the truth.
Oh, okay.
Because I had given myself this, I was kind of self-taught in terms of studying cinema, and also at age 11, grabbing my dad's Super 8 camera and shooting little films starring my younger brother Vinny. I came there with a kind of a typical, 19-year-old know-it-all. I used to correct one of my teachers every day. It became an ongoing thing, where like my fellow students would be like, Johnny, wait, is he right or is he wrong? I mean, well, actually, Preston Sturgis worked at Paramount. He only did one film at MGM. That was in 1938, and yeah, it was kind of obnoxious, but it was more of a social thing, and also the best thing about that particular school, because it was a small school, unlike the bigger film schools, you got your hands on the equipment immediately. Many of these schools, you don't really get to do it until you're a senior. Whereas they have a whole, process where you work on other people. You're working on other people's films. You might be doing sound on this and shooting on that. But at Emerson, we were, from the day we walked in, we were able to start breaking equipment. We were able to start, using the equipment, and that was great, because that really. Also, we were in an urban environment in Boston, and we were out on the street. We were doing this, what was essentially, we were shooting street theater, and there were also a lot of very talented actors at Emerson. Like in my best friend for years, who I met at Emerson and did all his first films, was Dennis Leary. Stephen Wright, the comedian, was in our class. Eddie Brill, the comedian. We had a lot of really talented people in these student films. Yeah. So it was a little different than what one might get at, say, NYU or USC or UCLA, which is, I think, much more of a structured, almost more serious approach. Emerson it was more lighthearted in some way. But I was also able at Emerson, again, on my own initiative, which was wonderful. I started a film society, so I was able to order movies, and I would hang on to the prints, and we would go up on, and for example, we ordered The Wild Bunch, the Sam Peckinpah Western, and that movie has like thousands of edits, of cuts, and we were able to put it on the editing machine and watch it slow motion, cut by cut by cut, and really learn so much about editing from that. And Sydney, I was able to start a film journal that enabled me to interview Elia Kazan, Francois Truffaut, on and on and on. Steven Spielberg. Those were my first interviews, and a number of them were collected in a book eventually. And I always loved to interview. I would just write to anybody. I mean, I wrote a letter to Francois Truffaut asking if I could send a cassette tape and a list of questions. And I'm 20 years old. I get back in the mail a letter from Truffaut from Paris in French on the onion skin paper, and I'm running down Beacon Street. Does anybody speak French? And I found a guy, and he said, "Yeah." It says, "Dear Mr. Gallagher, no, I will not consent to your request to answer a cassette tape." And I was like, "Oh man, are you kidding me?" And then it says, "However, I will be in New York for the New York Film Festival, and if you contact this office," and I got to interview him in person. And they were always so great and wonderful and giving.
Sure.
And I learned so much from them. In fact, you can go on YouTube and Google, search for John Gallagher interviews, and you'll see a number of them there are on video, including an interview with Dennis Hopper, which is pretty spectacular. He used this interview when he would speak at schools later in his life, because we covered a lot of ground, and we talked a lot about acting, and I challenged him to cry on the spot, which he did, and he explained how he did it. And so really, and I learned, you can imagine just so much from talking. I mean, I interviewed silent movie stars and the cinematographers who shot The Quiet Man, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon and won Oscars for John Ford, and just hundreds of veteran filmmakers who at first were just like, "Are you kidding? What do you? How do you know about all this stuff?" And then they would because I did know, they would be very, very giving with their knowledge. Sure. So that was an interesting thing to do in retrospect. It wasn't really. I had read that Peter Bogdanovich had done this. He had interviewed Howard Hawks and Orson Welles and John Ford, and wrote program notes for different cinematiques. And I did the same, and he got free admission, and I did the same thing. I went to a Cinematheque in Philadelphia and said, "Look, I'll write you program notes for every show. Just give me a couple of free tickets." And that was again furthering my education, and finding Cindy in subsequent years that regardless of the budgets. And I've worked very, very low budget, and I've worked pretty decent budgets. That if you know this stuff, it's hard to mess up. It's hard to direct yourself into a corner if you kind of know, how it was done. For people in LA, there are amazing resources there at the Academy Library, at USC, at UCLA, where the studios donated all of their production materials to these institutions. So, for example, Warner Brothers gave everything to USC, and you can go in there and look at the daily production reports. These are the forms that the assistant director would have to fill out every day to keep the production on track, and you see what order they shot, what problems they had. Mr. Bogart left the set promptly at 5 p.m., insisting that it was in his contract he didn't have to work past 5 o'clock. There's all that kind of Betty Davis. Miss Davis, you left at 1 p.m. after she had a fight with the makeup artist. It's fascinating on that level, just from the production histories, but it shows you how they did this great work, and so quickly too. That's out there. It's an amazing resource. I've got a book coming out next year. I co-wrote with Frank Thompson about William Wellman, Wild Bill Wellman, who directed the first Oscar winner, Wings, and Public Enemy with Cagney, and A Star Is Born, and the original, and so forth. And I've been through, those files, and it just comes to life, and you really can see how he was able to, on the Public Enemy, the great gangster picture with Jimmy Cagney, they basically, a slate is when, the thing you hold up and they click it and you say action. Well, they just cut the slates off that movie, and they had very little footage left over. And that's how prepared the director was, and Wellman was always like that. And I've taken a great lesson, from his work. And that's why I generally, I did this movie, The Networker. We shot it in 15 days and never had 1 minute of overtime. And we were on a different location just about every day with a very large cast. And I was able to pull it off because, well, A, I know what I'm doing, but I had a cinematographer who understood what I was doing and could keep the pace going. Because it's one thing for me to be sitting there saying, are we ready, are we ready, are we ready? I mean, it still takes, the camera has to be ready and lights have to be ready, and, as when you have a lot of actresses, makeup's got to be ready, and the hair's got to be just so. I mean, I like, I want to make my actors look good. I want to make sure that, there we are, they're ready to go. So often, there is a lot of hurry up and wait, but, if you can get a rhythm going, everybody starts to respond to that, and you can really, move, keep it moving, keep it quality, and stay within or under budget, which obviously is very, very important. You don't want to get to the last day of shooting and we're out of money. Do we really need this scene? That kind of thing, which happens to the best of them.
Sure. Of course, definitely. Now, I want to do a secondary question as it relates to the theater side, the teaching side of things, I should say, before we move on to the next thing. I want to just let everybody know this, so just listen for a second. I want to name off all the different places that you've either taught or lectured so that people are familiar with some of the background that you have. Because I know you've done the New York Film Academy, the Writers Boot Camp, the Learning Annex, the Barrow Group, of course, the Polaris Group, School of Visual Arts, obviously Shetler Studios, Actors Alliance, as well as One-on-One New York City. Now, I have two different types of questions, because I know that you've done the two types of offerings, meaning workshop-wise, as far as advanced directing versus film improvisation. Yeah. So, tell me, or kind of detail for me, the biggest battle a developing director will experience, that as far as, explain to me that you cited in the past before that you absolutely abhor auditions. So I was curious to ask why that is.
I hate them. Well, I'll tell you, as I said, I love actors. And there's so many wonderful actors in New York. And it gets really hard when you've got, half a dozen actors, any one of them is going to be terrific. And yet you only really have 5 to 10 minutes with them in the audition. Then you call them back another day for a callback. And then other factors come in. Who are they playing opposite? It always helps me that I have at least one of the leads already cast, so I can have them there and see how their chemistry is with actor A, B, C, D, E. And you always know instantly. Like when you see, the actor reading with a particular, they have the chemistry. I did an action movie with Steve James, John Leguizamo's first starring role, and Steve had a leading lady, and we had some wonderful actresses coming in, all of whom were wonderful and would have been great in the part, but there was the one actress Valerie Pettiford from the Broadway show Fosse, they just had a chemistry. It was just you loved it instantly, so she got the part. And but with the auditions, so often what I've done is I'm sorry, I'm guessing someone else, but I'm going to create a role for you because I liked what you did so much, and especially, and this is key to any actors listening, it is so important that you can follow direction, that you can take direction. If we do an audition and you do it, and that's okay, that's good. Listen, this time I want you to you bring it down, 25%, but keep the intensity, but just bring your volume down 20%. Now we do it again, and they get louder. Well, I'm sorry, they can't take direction. There's just no way I'm going to cast that person because we don't have time. I don't have time on the set to teach acting. I mean, Spielberg said it best. He said, look, 90% of directing an actor is casting the actor. And then, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that obviously he's a genius. It's once you have that part, once I give you that role, it's yours. And I expect you to know it more than me. And then my job is to be your first audience. As far as with teaching, it's interesting when I've taught. There have been times when, on the same day, I've been at School of Visual Arts teaching young directors, and that night I'm at the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater teaching young actors. And the directors, and I would bring actors in for the directors to work with, and I'll say, okay, who wants to go do a scene first? And all the actors put their heads down and look at the floor. And I say, okay, look, you're paying for this. These are my friends. I'll chat with them, and when you're ready, you let me know. Whereas at the Playhouse with the actors, I would say, okay, who wants to go first? And they leave a trail. You can see like their footprints like on my head, and they're so anxious to get up and perform. But that's because in so many cases, I know it was in my first movie was a beach movie, an East Coast rock and roll, beer bikinis, and East Coast New Jersey beach movie. And my second movie was a bang, wham bam action movie. It wasn't until my third film that I directed something that was personal and coming out of real life. And it's only because you're a kid, and you're shy to be considered. You don't want to be called an artist. And there's nothing wrong with that. You are an artist, but there's somehow that's not. What do you mean? No, I'm a man. I'm not. No. There's something not. In society, and these kids in the new directors are. It's like they're afraid of the actors. It's like they think. I certainly was. They think that the actors have a secret language, all their own, that only they know, and that's why so many young directors kind of hide behind the camera, and they don't know how to talk to an actor. And actors need, some actors need nothing. Some actors need everything, and then everything in between. And you really need to know how to, ultimately, what I learned from Cindy, from doing all those interviews with directors, I learned the following. Everybody was totally different. Every one of these directors. Their backgrounds, their style, everything, with one exception. They all said the most important thing is to establish a comfortable, creative environment that can only come from the director. And however it takes to do that, in my case, I do it with humor. I do it with love. My sets are, I'm 3/4 Italian. My sets are like an Italian wedding. There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of the same people. I have a lot of repeat, cast and crew. We play music. We dance. It's a joyous thing we're so lucky to be doing, and even on the hard ones, you still want to maintain that. And with a new kid director, they're not fully, formed human beings yet. They haven't, lived. Like I said, when I was 22, when I did my first feature, it was about high school kids on the Jersey Shore partying. Well, that's because I knew about that. At least I was smart enough to make something I knew about. And then the next thing I did was basically a spaghetti western, a contemporary spaghetti western, because I love spaghetti westerns. But it wasn't until then I had lived life a little bit and been through some stuff that I was able to do work that reflected truth, reality, and I understood what the great directors were always talking about when they talked about that. There's a great book called Truth by Susan Batson, who is a legendary acting coach. Nicole Kidman does not do a movie without Susan. Denzel Washington. Susan has been thanked more times at the Oscars and the Golden Globes than any agent ever. She's here in New York. I'm actually her guest again tomorrow night on her industry. She does an industry night. She brings in filmmakers. Highly recommend it. It's called Truth.
Okay.
She also refers quite a bit to classic cinema.
Okay. Gotcha. In fact, I have a question relative to cinema in terms of inching towards the improvisation side. Just a curiosity question. Do you think that the majority of filmmakers today, and that's inclusive of yourself, of course, kind of prefer the off-the-cuff technique versus, let's say, something like method or Meisner technique? In your opinion, what do you think gives the best performance?
I think that most, I can't obviously speak for everybody, but I think that most directors today are very, very much into improv, and also in auditions. This has been something that really started maybe 10 years ago that in my noticing, and I would love to do it, where, the actor, has been given the scene, they've studied it, they come in and they play the scene. Then they're asked to put the scene aside and to do it as an improv, and I will whisper in the ear of my reader who's reading with them and throw them curveballs and see how they respond. That tells me a lot about the actor, about can they think on their feet. I also, I know a lot of people do that in auditions. Is to do. So it's an essential skill. They really have to have that. The other thing, I can tell you is that there's people, if a scene is not working on the set, you throw it away and you improv it. And it will always, and then you go back to the scene, and it always suddenly, like magic, it works. Because what the improv does for the actor is it frees them so that they don't have to worry about remembering their dialogue. They're not worrying about the lines. They know the scene. They know what it's about. They know who they are. So now all they have to do is just be in the moment, which, sounds harder than it is. To not act is the key to film acting. Jack Lemmon, this is a great story. Jack Lemmon was a New York actor. He did theater, he did live TV, which was like doing a play. Goes to Hollywood for his first movie. The director is the great George Cukor, who did Philadelphia Story, David Copperfield, and they do a take. Mr. Cukor says, okay, cut. Jack, let's do it again. Give me a little less. Take 8, cut. Jack, a little less. Take 25, Jack, a little less. Finally, Jack says, Mr. Cukor, if I do any less, I'll be doing nothing. And Cukor said, exactly. And it's really true, because for whatever reason, I don't know, I'm sure there's some scientific reason, the camera captures what's going on inside. It reads your soul. I have literally had a scene, a love scene, where the actors hated each other. Yet, they had to be all lovey-dovey. Sure. And I'm watching this scene, and I know what the actor is thinking about. He's thinking not, oh, how much I love you. He's thinking, am I going to have the turkey or the ham and Swiss for lunch today? And I could see that in his face. So I sent the prop person out for some roses, and I pulled the actor aside, and I said, look, she hates you, and it's ruining your work. I want you to give her these flowers, apologize, and play the scene like you really think about it's your real girlfriend. And that's how you these are the games you gotta, as a director, you have to play if it's not working. I pulled one on Steve James and Reb Brown in a fight scene once. They're both two. Really? They had a lot of fun. They were two action stars in the 80s and 90s, and I went up to each of them separately and I said, Steve thinks he's really going to kick your ass in this scene. I mean, we're all friends here. I don't want anybody to get hurt. And Reb was like, "What? He said that?" And I went up to Steve and I said, Reb has a lot of fans, and he's really looking to kick your ass in this scene. And Steve was like, "Buddy, no way." They did a great job, and finally, after we shot for however long we shot, and Reb says to me, "Johnny, did you got everything you need for the fight?" I said, "Yeah, bud, thank you, man, great job." He goes, "Okay, well, I think I have to go to the hospital. I broke my thumb." So they got so into it, and that's an old William Wellman. That's an old William Wellman trick. And we were, of course, all best friends. And James was a wonderful actor. He left us way too soon. He had pancreatic cancer at age 41.
Right.
He was in the American Ninja movies. He's just a great actor. But again, learned a lot. You learn from who you work with. I've worked I worked with some of them. Ben Gazzara, a legend. I was very blessed to work with him and become very close to him, because that project, Blue Moon, my partner at the time, Sylvia Kaminer, and we had him attached for 5 years before we got the money. And so that was a lot of time to get to know him, because he could be very intimidating to a lot of people. And he loved the movie. It's one of his favorites. And we were being very, very close. I learned, of course, so much from him. And, Stacy Keach I worked with, another great actor. William Forsythe I put right up there with them. He is just the way, the command, the way they hold the screen. And, William, he's played Capone. He's played gangsters and Dick Tracy.
Yep.
He's been in so many hard-ass, tough guys, scary guys. In our movie, in The Networker, he plays a loving father. a tough guy, but he's a loving father in the printing business. Right. And what he does in this movie is so moving. There's two scenes in particular that he just, you just got to stand back and say cut and applaud, and that's from a lifetime of doing it. You will love. We're going to arrange it so you can talk to him. You'll love interviewing him. He's got so many great stories.
I know, and like I said, he's a classic example of what I told you, which is you have to go back to some of his early on performances and look at him there, and he's taken something from every performance he's ever done to build the man that he is right now. Even just the other night, I was watching Gotti, and I'm like, I'm watching him in this film, and I'm thinking to myself, I've seen him thereafter, and it's it's a chameleon. It's a chameleon effect. It's one to another with him, and I'm so just fraught with the whole idea of, oh my God, what is he going to transform himself into the New Yorker, of course. Now I want to ask you. I want to switch gears again. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do you have thought? Oh, okay.
No,
we want to go towards. Are you sure? You can finish. I'll let you say what you got to say. I want to turn the magic wand here a little bit, and I want to mention that you worked with actors of all stages, meaning either small size or sizable stages. You've had some triumphant times in theater, to name just a couple of the plays you've done. You've done East of Evil. You've done Unspeakable Ways, Screenwriters Series, that's both number 1 and 2, and, of course, 5 women wearing the same dress. So I have a couple questions relative to the theater side of things. I've been told by some that theatrical performances, the production is either considered a boom or a bomb by an audience within the first 20 to 30 minutes. Would you say that that's true or not true? This is very uneducated coming from me. I would say that's true.
Oh, no.
I am not.
Okay. My theater experience is extremely limited. I got into it. I was asked to direct some one-acts, and I said, look, I don't even know what the difference between upstage and downstage. I would direct it like a movie. And the producer said, that's good, I like that. And I did it, and I loved it. I felt like I was in a rock band. But my overall experience directing theater is frustrating because you rehearse it and plan it a certain way, and then once it's up, I can't say cut if it's not going the way we didn't rehearse it like that.
Right.
I've also had classic in 5 women wearing the same dress, which is a great play by Alan Ball, who did American Beauty and what was the TV show on HBO? Dead.
Oh my God! Don't make me up. Help me out. What's the premise?
Oh God, it was a great show.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Deadwood?
Anyway, Alan Ball, and it's one set. It's a debutante's bedroom in the South, and there's a telephone and a doorway. Well, in the first minute and a half of the play, the phone rings. The actress picks up the phone, has an argument with her mother, and then hangs up, and the play continues. Well, one night, she slammed the phone down so hard it broke, and so the rest of the night, the phone didn't work, and there were a number of cues that were stemmed from the phone ringing. So the actors would just be standing there waiting for the phone to ring, and they would never ring. And after the show, what happens is basically in a play, which is again was all new to me, is you direct it, then you have the opening, and then the director disappears and then comes back periodically and gives notes. Well, I happened to be coming back that night, and after the play, the actors all came out. They were all like contrite and hanging their heads. And I said, well, think of it this way. At least the set didn't fall down, and I fell on the floor laughing. And everybody started laughing. And, like, you know, what are you going to do? This stuff happens. But so you know, look, live theater is, there's no doubt, is very exciting. I'd love to do more, but I could speak more, frankly, as an audience member, maybe. But I know that the ones that I have directed, they have gotten very good response, and the material has been very strong. And in fact, a number of these plays that I did starred a bunch of the guys who went on to do The Sopranos, it was their first, you know, it was their first theatrical experience. So myself and with these guys, and they're always fun. You know, they're like my uncles and cousins. So I've done so much work with, you know, Vinny Pastore and Frank Vincent and Tony Sirico and you know, Michael Imperioli and Victor Colicchio, Burt Young, you know, and they're just fun. I mean, you know, we Italians are entertaining. What else can I say?
Trust me, I know. I do. I know exactly what you mean. Now, before I forget to ask you, because there's a notation here now, are you still an active member, or I should say you were on the board of directors for Real Theater Company? So is that something that you still partake in?
Real Theater Company, the head of that moved to L.A. and is actually doing more film now. I think the company is is maybe just suspended. I haven't heard much about them, but they did. They did a wonderful production of Hair on Theater Row here in New York, and they did a great production, an original production of called Us from Peter. We're using the music of Peter Gabriel. Maggie Levin, a former student of mine at the Neighbor Playhouse, who produced some shorts for me and was super talented. You'll be definitely hearing from her in the coming years. So I mean, if she asked me tomorrow I'd totally be there for her.
Oh, of course. I imagine so, definitely. And, you know, you kind of gave a segue earlier when we started talking, of course, because you and I, of course, are both authors. So the one thing that you had, one of the things you talked about book-wise is, of course, you penned the film directors on filming. So I have a question relative to that. Out of the countless cataloged by you in print, which legend would you say you most closely copycat as far as your own style? If you
I'm sorry, could you ask that again, Cindy?
Oh, it's okay. Of all the different countless numbers that you've cataloged in print, in that book, as far as director-wise, which of those legends do you feel you most closely copycat in terms of your own style for directing? If you were standing by side.
Well, that's a tough one, but the one I would say, there's a writer-director in that book named John Milius. John Milius wrote Apocalypse Now, Jeremiah Johnson. He directed Red Dawn, With the Wind and the Lion, Conan the Barbarian. He is kind of a throwback to the old storyteller sitting around the campfire up in the Rockies in the 1830s telling stories. There's a storytelling ethic that he has that I've always related to. Plus, he's a major history buff. I'm a huge Teddy Roosevelt fan, and he's done the best work. He did the Rough Riders miniseries, which was phenomenal. And so John Milius is really someone I've always looked up to.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I was like, I'd just like to compare as far as that goes. Now I'm going to switch you over again and talk or discuss documentaries. To those of you that are listening that don't know, you've been both a cast member as well as a commentator, meaning, of course, in the Heroes for Sale. Question relative to that.
Yes, well, that's a Wellman. That's a 1933 William Wellman really stark drama about the Depression. And I did the audio commentary on the DVD that's available from Warner Home Video.
Right. I want to ask this question too. Maybe it's just my imagination, or maybe it's because I'm about to be a documentary filmmaker myself, but I've just noticed lately, and this is a trend maybe in the last 5 years, and maybe it's just me, but we'll see what you think, a shift towards just bunches of people making these multitudes of docudramas. I mean, the new trend is not so much maybe short film, but I'm just seeing a barrage of docudramas / documentaries coming out there. Or is it different in New York? Because it just seems as though that's kind of like the niche everybody is kind of gravitating towards these days.
Do you mean documentaries, or do you mean a docudrama like, say, like the Hatfield and the McCoys or the Sons of Liberty?
I'm thinking actual like documentary.
Well,
I've just noticed every time I turn around, there's something coming on.
I think that this is kind of a golden age of documentaries. I know they're still difficult to do. One of my colleagues, Sylvia Kaminer, directed 2 very successful feature documentaries over the last couple of years, but there's just a lot more out there, and I think you're right. There is a proliferation of feature length documentaries. I mean, some of these HBO. Look at the HBO thing with Durst.
Right. Exactly. That's
and there is a lot of. I mean, even like, 2 of the great directors, Scorsese and Jonathan Demme, and Spike Lee, for that matter.
Spike Lee.
They will alternate their regular movies with documentaries. And Marty's done some great documentaries.
That's true. Or like Oliver Stone too. That's another one. Oh my God! Gotta love Oliver Stone.
For sure.
God, I love him. Definitely.
Yeah,
He's all about, all of that good stuff. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I want to talk about 305 Media Group.
I'm sorry?
Oh, really?
In 1984, I was in L.A. on a writing job. And upstairs, it was a small apartment complex up in the hills, and there was somebody on the floor above me carrying on, breaking stuff, screaming, loud music till 7 o'clock in the morning. And after a couple of nights of this, I went up and I knocked on the door. It was Oliver Stone writing Platoon.
Oh my God!
And I said, and I knew him from. I knew that he had written Conan for John Milius, and I knew him from Midnight Express, and I knew who he was, and I was like, hey, no problem, man, do what you got to do. He was wasted.
God, that's wild.
Funny, right?
That's so funny to hear that, right? That's like nuts.
Oh yeah.
Right, I want to get over to 305 Media Group. In case you guys haven't been listening in or you're first coming in now, it was founded in 2008, and this, of course, is your production platform. You've done 5 features and 16 shorts in only a frequency of 4 years. So I want you to address
I think we're up to almost 10. Actually, we're up to almost 10 features. And I just got a new deal today on a very exciting movie that I'm going to be rewriting and directing. It's called Brook Hollow Warriors. It's a coming of age with a major twist. It's a terrific project. I was recommended by Vinnie Pastore to the producer, Angela Galizio, and we just locked it down today, and I'm going to start on the rewrite immediately. But a number of these features, a number of these films are projects that, as I said, I've mentored. I've been a mentor to some new filmmakers, and in some cases, I've been a tour mentor to some new filmmakers. But that goes with the territory. But Frank, I think we're up to 10 features and 20 shorts, something like that.
Gotcha. Well, the reason
we've
I
got
bring that
3
up is
features.
because I want to. Go ahead.
I was going to say we have 3 features and a short world premiering in just the next 6 weeks, which is by far a record for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to know your take on this question. This is a center of conflict. Every time I talk to a director, this is a center of conflict. And actually some actors, too, because they have very specific ideas on this. And we started talking about this off air. It's kind of been said that the studios will kind of select and salivate over the films that are produced by companies that either carry clout as far as cast-wise or currency-wise, meaning a lot of money with big names sort of stuff. Talk a little bit about that, because obviously we talked about the Oscars and such. Are we really still in that politically correct scenario where it takes big names and big money to get the job done and to get the job recognized?
I think absolutely. Listen, I directed one studio movie. It was an action picture. I'm very proud of it. It was the exec producer was the legendary Menachem Golan, who looked at the dailies and he said, "My boy, the acting is wonderful, the directing is wonderful, but it looks like Apocalypse Now." And I said, "Oh, thank you. Oh, that's bad?" He goes, "You're giving me a Rolls Royce. I want a Volkswagen." In other words, the mentality of product line. Now, I've done my time out there. I lived out there about 8 years over the course of 15. I spent my free time in the archives, studying. I did not get involved with, all the nonsense. And I found that, I hate to make generalizations, but
sure.
I know for example, there was a fantastic actor named Mike Mazurki. And he was in Murder in My Suite. He was in Ten Commandments. And I interviewed him on the phone. And he said, and he was upset. I said, "Mike, what's the matter?" He goes, "I went into audition today for a music video." Can you imagine a music video? And there's a 25-year-old kid directing. And he says to me, "What have you done?" And I stood up and I said, "Did you ever hear John Ford?" He said, "No." "Did you ever hear Cecil B. DeMille?" He said, "No." "Did you ever hear Wild Bill Wellman?" He said, "No." "Did you ever hear Frank Capra?" He said, "No." And I says to him, hey, go join a video club. And I walked out. I mean, the mentality is just, look what they make. It's embarrassing. Hollywood used to be, look what they did in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. Look at the crap they're making. Look how many original screenplays are actually produced nowadays. Out of Hollywood.
I know.
Very few. That's why the indie. Listen, the 70s in Hollywood was a golden age. French Connection, Taxi Driver, Nashville, Altman, Last Picture Show, on and on and on. Dog Day Afternoon, Chinatown, and Cuckoo's Nest. Those movies never would have gotten made today. Those would have been done independently today.
Oh, of course.
And it's really a shame because listen, I go to Germany every September for the Oldenburg Film Festival. It's the European Sundance, and it's embarrassing. Unless you're a New York indie, I'm not embarrassed, but the Hollywood product, and then they get into the hypocrisy of, there's not enough diversity for women. Well, then do something about it. I mean,
exactly.
It's just, you're crying that then do it. I mean, it's nonsense. I mean, do we need how many more superhero movies?
Right. Thank you very much. That's all I'm saying.
Really, I mean, it's just
I agree.
We got so dumbed down. There was some report last night about how millennials just don't know anything. I mean, look at the Kardashian phenomenon. That is
don't start me on
mind-blowing.
It's insane.
Mind-blowing.
It drives me nuts.
That people, that they know kids today can name every Kardashian girl, but they have no idea who the majority whip is, or that's
right.
nothing. I mean, oh my God! And part of that is it's what they're exposed to. I mean, let's see some American history is rich with action, adventure, romance, passion. And how many movies, from American history do we get? None.
Exactly.
It's really, it's a crying shame. It really is, and maybe, maybe it changes when. That's why we try to do a movie that, I've got an action film. It's very commercial. That looks like that could be next, and it's done to be able to do something you really want to do. That's why I love this project. The one I just mentioned, Brook Hollow Warriors, because it works on many levels. It works on a very commercial level. It's the right demographic, and so that could be a big enough success so that I could do something smaller that might not be so overtly commercial. Certainly that a studio would never do.
Oh, right. That's exactly
you know what I mean.
What I mean.
So.
I do, exactly.
And the people that filmmakers always do, it's like Coppola after the Godfather movies did The Conversation, and Scorsese after
Kings of New York,
Goodfellas, he did Age of Innocence. So that's a very common thing to vary the work like that. But at the end of the day, you gotta.
Gotcha.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you got to get somebody's got to, write the check.
Oh, trust me, I'm learning this as we go along here, definitely. Now, before we get into your upcoming things, I want to talk a minute about. Everybody comes on the show. We always talk about a personal side of things. Because believe it or not, John Gallagher actually is a person who doesn't walk around being a director 24/7. So there's a few things I want to mention to people out there. Like for instance, I was kind of shocked to find out that John Gallagher actually has watched, and I'm assuming likes, Breaking Bad. I don't get that show. I'm sorry. I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
I watched the whole thing in about 11 days. I mean, every episode.
Seriously?
There was only one episode that I couldn't watch, and it was a very different style, and it wasn't really about anything. It didn't move the story. To me, it was a great. I mean, I love Dark. I mean, it's a great, Dark. I love the acting. But I'll tell you one thing: you should watch some of the bloopers. Some of the outtakes are so funny. They are having so much fun, which you can imagine shooting that and living in that world. You better have some fun. You better be cracking up in between takes. But no, that's Breaking Bad, and I came to that show very late. I was like, all right, already, I'll watch Breaking Bad. I mean, so many people were on my back about it.
I know.
And now I watch and love Better Call Saul.
Okay. Aha! Really?
The other two that I adored were House of Cards. In the network, we have Al Sapienza, who was on the show, and I loved Orange Is the New Black. And in the network, one of our co-stars is Alicia Rayner, who plays one of the wardens. She plays Fig in Orange Is the New Black. I haven't seen the new season of House of Cards, but I have to also say I'm a pretty good audience. I mean, I can watch. I think those are great shows, but I can watch something bad. In fact, I can learn from something bad.
Well, that was going to be my question. I was going to be like, can he sit and watch a movie? Can you watch a movie and not be a director? Because I picture that very hard for you. Like, take your cap off, and you're not you. You're just you.
I'll tell you how I learned this. That's a really good question.
Okay.
When I was in school at Emerson, and I was in our film studies, we would watch, say, Bonnie and Clyde in the morning, 10 a.m., break for lunch, and come back in the afternoon and watch it again. In the morning, we were not allowed to take notes, regardless of what the movie was. In the morning, you just watched the movie. And then in the afternoon, you studied the movie. Now, yeah, it can be hard for me. I have to stop myself, but I'm pretty darn good about doing that. I also try. I have a huge collection, and an archive, and I really do try to watch 2 movies a day. Generally, one very early in the morning, and then something late at night, and then depending on how the day is going. But however, I manage it, and I try to, and I keep a track of what those films are, and I would tell you that many of the films are films I've seen. Like, for example, since January 1st, I've probably watched maybe 150 movies, and there's probably only 40 that I had never seen. And it's a real range. I'm just looking up, for example, in just the last week, I watched a great 1962 Blake Edwards movie with Lee Remick called Experiment in Terror. I watched the Maisel Brothers documentary Grey Gardens. I watched the Bob Hope Technicolor 1944, The Princess and the Pirate. I watched The Big Lebowski. I watched a bunch of early 30s, because they're only like an hour long, a bunch of early 30s pre-code movies like Big City Blues and Picture Snatcher with Jimmy Cagney, and I watched McCabe and Mrs. Miller with Warren Beatty and Julie Christie. I hadn't seen since I was in high school, and I try to keep it varied, and everything I learn or get inspiration from, everything, even a really horrible film, which I finally saw, called The Iron Petticoat from 1956. Believe it or not, Bob Hope is an Air Force officer, and Katharine Hepburn is a Soviet pilot who defects. Bob Hope and Katharine Hepburn with the most god-awful Russian accent. I mean, my jaw was on the ground. It was just dreadful. And
oh my God.
It was written by probably the greatest screenwriter ever, Ben Hecht, who wrote Gunga Din, Wuthering Heights, The Front Page, His Girl Friday, Scarface, and he wanted his name taken off it because Bob Hope had his radio writers and his TV writers add all of these like side jokes that really just ruined the movie. I mean, it's a crazy film, but I had to see it.
I'm absolutely not watching that one now. So now I have 2 more personal questions before we move on to films. First off, you have met 2 of my favorite actors, one of which used to be my fantasy husband in my head. I bet you didn't know that. And it's not Frank Vincent. Frank Vincent is one that I absolutely adore, and I think I told you that. But do you know that I have wanted to meet and marry Michael Madsen for like forever? Ever. I have this, oh my God, do I love that guy. Love
He
him.
is a trip.
Oh my God, and he writes poetry, man.
Total trip. And I'll tell you, he's the guy. I'm so glad he's in. I think he's in Quentin's new movie, The Western, because he's such a. I mean, every director wants to make a Western.
Sure.
Including me. and he'd be the first guy I cast.
Oh my gosh, goodness! Did you meet him? Did you know him or work with him? Because I don't think you worked with him, right?
No, I met him
I just happened to see his picture.
I met Quentin Tarantino before he was Quentin Tarantino at a friend's house in L.A. in 1988 or 89, and then saw him, and we instantly hit it off. We were a couple of film geeks, and then we met again the night that he won the Oscar for Pulp Fiction, the script.
Nice.
And he totally remembered me. He loved my film, Street Hunter. Then we spent a week together a couple of years later at South by Southwest, where my film, The Deli, premiered, and he was always, Quentin goes there like every year. And I was invited to his Friars Club roast, and which was a huge, event. But the cool thing was, I ended up at the private party after, which was really, that's was Jerry Lewis is sitting there, and I just every place you turned, you were bumping into somebody, and he was awesome, Quentin, and that's where I met Michael, and he actually just did a movie in Istanbul with one of my favorite actresses, who was supposed to be in The Networker, but they ran over schedule, so she couldn't do it. But we're working together next year. We're writing a script together based on her one-woman show. So anyway, but he's a guy who, you can get. I mean, he likes to work, and so you can see in his filmographies, that he does a ton of stuff always. But no, I haven't as of yet had the pleasure.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm so enamored, and I was like, oh my God, I got to meet him. So my last question before we move
on
to
the Bad Boys,
films.
You like the Bad Boys?
You're learning, aren't you? You're getting it. I like tattoos. I like poetry men, and I like my gangsters. I like my Italians.
Awesome.
I told you that. I like my boys.
Well, listen, Frank is I've done so much work with Frank.
Oh my God!
And in fact, I'm very proud of something. We honored him in 2012 at the Soho Film Festival, and my dear Sybil Santiago, who's the director of the festival and produced these last few films that we did, she got us a theater and set me up with a microphone, and I did an hour and a half long interview with Frank, and it turned into a Vegas act. Did you see it? It's so much fun.
I watched it last
and that's
night.
so him.
It is so much fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
And even
Absolutely
Tony Sirico, Paulie Walnuts from Sopranos. I've done a lot of work with them. And
I've known
Vinny Pastore,
yes, I have.
Big Pussy, is a dear friend of mine. And those guys are just Mike Starr. Do you know Mike Starr? Mm-hmm. He was the hitman in Dumb and Dumber. He eats the chilies.
I know him. I do know him, but I haven't. I've heard the name before. You know what I mean? I haven't dug or learned a whole lot of stars from him. But I've heard that.
He's a Goodfellas also, and he starred in The Deli, and and I love I love these guys. This stems back to one of your first questions, to those old pictures that I saw as a kid, those early Warner Brothers movies so Cagney and Bogart were the stars, but the supporting cast would be like Alan Jenkins and Ward Bond and Barton McLean and Frank McHugh, all these wonderful character actors that gave the texture, and I love that. I mean, to me, I really believe, and I tell actors, there's no such thing. You're on camera, you're complaining you're only on camera for 5 seconds. Well, guess what? For 5 seconds, you're the star of the movie. There's no such thing as a small part. Only small actors.
Bingo.
Somebody said that.
Exactly. Absolutely. Now, before we move on to your films, I want to ask this, and before I preface this, I'll say this much. When I was on your Facebook page, which you don't know about me, is all-time favorite movie of all time, 100%, It's a Wonderful Life. That's my always been my personal, remains my personal. So here's my question. I'll leave it to you whether you want to move along or if you want to talk about November of 2013, because I think it's a very poignant point of your life that speaks a great deal about you.
That was a red letter day, all right. I'm fine to talk about it because I will tell you that so many people, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people have contacted me or reached out to me to say how inspired they are by the recovery. And very simply, we were in pre-production on a movie. I was coming from auditions. I fell asleep, and I woke up 6 weeks later. Came out of a coma. I survived third-degree burns. I was in a fire, and lost the ability to walk. They told me I would never. My apartment, which I've lived here for 22 years, was uninhabitable. The doctor said, don't work. You're not going to be able to work for a couple of years, and you're not going to be able to breathe on your own if you even survive. And the good news is that I survived. I breathe on my own. I walk. I was in a wheelchair in a nursing home where I was by far the youngest patient, but I happened to have a copy of Blue Moon with me, starring Ben Gazzara and Rita Moreno. They were in their 70s when we did the movie, and I screened the film for the patients, and they loved it. They gave it a sitting ovation. And my friend Steve Stanulus, who is a major story in and of himself, Steve called me and said, I want you to direct The Networker. When are you out? When are you getting home? And I said, wow, I'm supposed to be out in a few weeks. And I directed that picture, fresh out of, a physical therapy rehab where I learned how to walk again. And, the support that I got, I had a lot of people came out, to work on the picture, who wanted to be there for me. And and consequently now I have, honest to God, never been busier. It has really just been, and look, I happen to have the most amazing parents and family, brother and sister-in-law and niece and nephews and friends. Like, you really find out who your friends or your real friends are. And I sure did, and it just is a kind of not that I was the kind of person, I was always a workaholic. I was always, overachieving and very prolific. But the idea that I wouldn't be working, or the idea that that was it, I was almost dead, was enough to, just really, okay, we got to get these other movies get going. Let's get going. So consequently, now here we are. This time last year, I was in a wheelchair, and I've got the 4 movies world premiering. I've got 4 teaching gigs in the next month. Yep. We've got these movies in the pipeline, and every day, and it's just fantastic. And I'm watching 2 movies a day.
Exactly.
So
you see?
It is a blessing. It's a miracle, really. And I will always be just so grateful that I was given not only another chance at life, but that, the worst part was having, you imagine what my parents were going through when I was,
I can imagine.
and so I will always be so grateful to them and to Steve Stanulus, who offered me this movie, which he starred in, and he's fantastic in it. I'd worked with him many times before. He, I think, ultimately, understood, because he was almost killed. He was a NYPD cop by day and a male stripper by night for many years.
I know. I saw that. I know.
Do you know that he got injured on the job?
I do.
He got injured on the job as a cop, not as a stripper, and he started doing private security for Leo DiCaprio, who said, you should be an actor. He sent him to HP Studios, and he put him in Gangs of New York, and Steve just get plugged away, and he's been producing movies, and he's got a talent agent. He's got a book coming out, one-man show. We're partnered up, on a bunch of projects, and as I said, the movie is about a second chance. So it couldn't be a better kind of a comeback. It's about family. It's about a second chance. We're going to world premiere at the Soho Film Festival in New York City the second week of May, and then continue on to as many festivals as we can do, and then as we're figuring out our distribution options, and it's a fun. It's a guaranteed entertaining film with a fantastic cast. I mean, one thing.
Oh yeah.
Whether you like the movie, any of my movies or not, I always guarantee you good performances.
Oh, you betcha. I watched the trailer last night.
I really pay attention to the actors,
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Now, before we get to the last part of this, which is the films, I want everybody to listen to this. So, you know what? Just take a breath and don't say one word, because it's going to take me like 2 minutes to read this, folks. So to those of you who are listening, just listen to this, John Gallagher. This is exactly why I was so nervous to interview you. So just listen to this, folks. I got 2 big columns of things to tell you. These are the award places. So we got Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival, St. Louis Film Festival, National Board of Review, New York City Home Film Festival, World Fest Houston, Norrisburg Independent Film Festival, Avignon, I believe it is, New York Film Festival, Chatham, I can't even pronounce it, Film Festival. You've got your Picture Start Film Festival, Atlantic City Short Film Festival, Film Fest Oldenburg, New York Independent Film Festival, Queens Film Festival, Florida Film Festival, and Charleston Film Festival. And get this, folks, listen to this. He's got the Grand Prize, Spirit of Independent Award, Rising Star Award, People's Choice for Best Actress, a Gold Award, 21st Century Filmmaker Award, Best Comedy, Best Feature, Best Indie Feature, Best Feature and Best Actress, Official Selection, Audience Award, Jury Award, Best Film, and Recognition of Excellence in Filmmaking. And you'll wonder why I'm nervous. So here's my question on the award side of things. 2 things. You served as a juror, so have I. I've been a film festival judge. So my question to you is this. Name for me just a few of the film entities that in your mind have to be there, that are essential elements that would warrant winning an award such as these that are listed. Because there's some of those components that a judge actually looks for. And then the second part of the question. Yes?
I'm sorry. What is the first part? The connection just
the first
went
question.
Out.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a 2-part question. First of all, I want you to answer the fact: can actors actually attribute to the accolades? Let's say, for instance, if your direction, you did a film and you thought to yourself, you know what, I did the best I could, but it wasn't 100% on par. But the actors kind of attributed to pushing it over the top. And then, second of all, name a couple of the components, in your opinion, because you've served as a juror before. Tell us what is essential within a course of a film that you think would warrant you saying, okay, yes, this is film festival worthy?
Okay. I love the first part of the question. It amuses me because, for example, directing Ben Gazzara, I did not have to direct Ben Gazzara. I just had to be his audience. He was just perfection. So I cannot take any credit for directing him. I gave him what he needed, which was my undivided attention, and to make sure, there was one night that he was drinking, and because this generation, that's what they would do, him and the Mitchums and all, and he slurred a little bit, and I was about to correct him, and he just said, I know. So he even knew that. However, Rita Moreno, because she came from, the theater, she was always big. And it would take me like 4 takes to get her to where she needed to be. So consequently, when people would compliment me, when they would compliment Ben, his performance, I would have to say, well, that's Ben. I didn't direct him. And then they would say, oh, Rita, she was so great in that movie, and I always say thank you, because I take that because that was the directing. I mean, just obviously I need the instrument, but so it's very much so. Some actors you direct, and others you don't have to. I mean, the younger actors you generally do, and also, you're in the middle of a scene, and an actor might be sticking, maybe his tongue is flicking out, or they're rubbing their ear, or little things, little details. You have to be watching the actors like a hawk, and you also have to know, as a director, how it's going to edit together, how it's going to cut together. Crucial. And there have been many films I've done where, I've cut together a good performance out of an okay performance that was only okay because we were shooting it like we had to shoot all the action first, and here it is, the last thing in the day, and we have to shoot this guy's monologue, and it was not fair to the actor at all, but what are you going to do? And I was able to edit it into something that was respectable, so that's the thing there. The other thing in terms of what the components are, they're all on a jury scenario, an award scenario is always going to be by comparison with the other films. So there might be, and with these juries, sometimes it gets, you got 4 or 5 jurors, and one of them likes this really dark, arty, pretentious, nasty art film, and I find it completely, obnoxious and a waste of time. And I like the picture about, the couple trying to save their relationship, and how do you even compare those two, other than to say that the picture I like made me feel, because that's ultimately, now that other picture made that other juror feel, but I don't want to feel like that, and so I think ultimately it's the issue of making the audience feel, and I can't say I've done that. I can't say how to do it other than casting the right people, having the script where it should be, and never underestimating the power, the emotional power of the music. I've got a great composer named Ernie Mannix I've done a lot of work with. And, for example, there's, a couple of scenes with Steve Stanulus and William Forsythe in the networker that are very powerful and very emotional. Now, Ernie, when he adds his music to those scenes, which I haven't even heard yet, it's going to be wow. I know it because I know his style. He doesn't overdo it, but he knows how to kind of pluck the heartstrings, So it's really that, City, is the feeling it.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, I want to, before I ask the last question, which is, of course, about the upcoming films, here's what I want to highlight for you folks. He has more than, I don't even know, we don't even have enough airtime to talk about how many films he's done. I'm just going to name the 4 that I like the very most, which, of course, would be Blue Moon, which you were writer and director, The Deli, which you were director and co-author, and then the 2 films much earlier on, which is Men Lie in 1994, and, of course, Penance, which was in 1999. So I just have 2 questions about those films, and that kind of encompasses all your films, really. 2 questions. First of which is, while pairing the literal legends on screen, like, for instance, you have Rita Moreno and Ben Gazzara, like you talked about, is there ever such a thing as, is the power and performance amongst 2 legends, is that ever difficult, or does it ever pose a problem, meaning because they're both strong lead characters? Do you follow me?
I have not had that problem, and I think partly because I have met and spent so much time, with Lee Marvin, and I mean, with and as I said, Ben, I knew for 5 years before. Rita, I knew for maybe 3 years before, and so I butted heads. I mean, she'll tell you too. I butted heads with Rita, never with Ben, but I did butt heads with Rita in the interest of, she wants to be as good as she can be, and I want to help her get there, and consequently sometimes you're gonna butt heads. But ultimately, when she saw the film, and the world premiere was at the Palm Springs Film Festival, and they sat, Rita and I, next to each other. We had been very close before. I used to go up to her apartment down the street. She used to let me play with her Oscar and her Emmy and her Tony, and we were cordial, but we sat next to each other, and 5 minutes into the movie, she leans over to me and she goes, "Hey, this is pretty good." And I said, "Thank you." 10 minutes later, she leans over to me and says, "Hey, I'm really good at this." And I'm like, "Yeah, you are." 15 minutes later, she leans down and she goes like, "I am so sorry." "That's all right, Rita, I forgive you." Now, that's a professional.
Right, of course it is. Of course, without a doubt.
And then, of course, when we got on stage for the Q&A, she tried to grab the microphone out of my hand.
Oh, my goodness gracious, look at that. Now, my only last question for you is this. Now, and we're all our own worst critic. That kind of goes without saying. So if I were to ask you right now and say to you, John, looking back, have you ever second-guessed yourself in terms of either casting or direction that you've done? And you've thought to yourself, looking at after the fact and shaking your head like, no, that just wasn't my best one. I
would say every movie I've ever done, I'm happy I did. Which I don't think everybody can say that. I haven't done anything that I haven't honestly loved, and some more than others, but obviously. Casting, there have been a couple of people that I ultimately was sorry I cast. One of them I had to fire.
Right.
But I would say other things have to do, with the second guessing comes in to play with, the deal making, dealing with the business side of the business is very treacherous. And I've never really had, I was roommates when right after I did my first movie, we were just out of school, and we lived, a few of us lived on the Lower East Side on 13th Street, between 2nd and 3rd, which was the block where a lot of Taxi Driver was shot, which we thought was so cool. And Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and Rob Tappert lived with us because they were close to one of my best friends from Emerson. Sam, of course, went on to direct the Spider-Man movies and Oz, and they produced many hit TV shows, Xena, Hercules, etc. And they were doing their first movie was Evil Dead, which became a classic horror film.
Oh yeah.
And
okay.
Sam became very, very, very successful. He's a sweetheart to this day. He's a nice Midwestern, nice boy from Michigan. Same thing with Bruce Campbell. He's a mensch and a prince.
Love him.
But Sam had something that is essential to, that kind of huge success, which is a producer who is just devoted to that director. And I never had that. Right. So I've had to kind of do it. So in the second guessing, maybe there's some people that I could have partnered up with. I've had many partners. That's probably where most of my misgivings actually would come. But again, that's life, that's learning, and that goes for any business. You know.
Of course, that goes without saying. You betcha. Now, if you would just let everybody know, obviously, our last question, and then we'll finish up the last thing, and you're all set. Tell everybody about, because obviously, of course, we're talking about the upcoming ones, which are Shopping to the Festival, which is, of course, The Networker, Sam, and Enchantments. If you could just tell the folks a little bit about each of those, please, I'd appreciate it.
We have The Networker, as I said, will world premiere at Soho, SohoFilmFest.com, and I directed that. I have another feature there called Enchantments, which I executive produced for a fantastic writer, director, producer. She wrote, directed, produced, and stars in this romantic comedy, and it's a wonderful movie that I love. I'm so proud of her. I did the same thing for a short film for her, and she's been in a bunch of my films. She's in The Networker, Kelsey O'Brien. So that will also screen. And Sam is a switch comedy, romantic comedy again, that I wrote with Nick Brooks, who is the son of Mel Brooks. Mel was our executive producer, and I produced the film with Nick and Sybil Santiago. And it stars Natalie Knepp, who's also in The Networker, and Sean Clier, and Stacy Keach, Brian Batt from Mad Men, Morgan Fairchild, and it's a lovely, sweet, feel-good movie that Nick directed. It's his directorial debut, and Mel exec produced. And this world premieres the second week of April at the Nashville Film Festival, which is a top 10 festival. And then a short film that I wrote and produced with the two lead actresses, Samantha Scafidi, who's also in The Networker and is also in Sam, and Mia Pinchoff is premiering at the Ridgewood Guild Film Festival in Ridgewood, New Jersey on April 30th. So that's a very funny, kind of a black comedy about two young actresses being interviewed off camera by me and talking about how they've come up together, and it's a lot of fun. I think we're going to get a lot of festival play with that too. With the features, you only really have about a year on the festival circuit, but short films can play like 3, 3 years. So we're expecting a good run with Act Naturally. Now, you may have noticed that there's a lot of these films are very incestuous, and there's a lot of the actors. I mean, once you find an actor, or that you can work with, you realize that you have a kind of a creative tribe, which I'm very blessed to have. And a lot of times, I can cast a movie out of my phone book because I know I know what I'm going to get. At the same time, I'm always open to new talent. That's where the teaching really comes in. And now I guess I'm kind of taking it on the road because I was just offered to teach a seminar in Washington, D.C., which is
nice.
Should be kind of fun. Different,
definitely.
meet different actors out of the marketplace here. So and then whatever then it's always a question of what's next. Is always a question of what money comes through first, and you kind of throw everything up against the wall and kind of see what's what. There's a terrific script by Bonnie DeBonis and Joe Bonney called Cooked, which is written for Joey D'Onofrio, who's a terrific actor. He played the young Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. He's in Blue Moon, The Deli, Sam, The Networker, and Enchantments. He plays a double role. We're hoping to do that. This picture, Men of Violence, the Brook Hollow Warriors. We have a pretty full slate of projects, and we'll see what's next.
You betcha. Now, before I forget, I'm just going to go through this rundown real quickly, and we'll finish the last little bit up, which is my reflections on you, and you are all set, Mr. John Gallagher. I'm going to read off this stuff for people listening. Oh, you're quite welcome. Listen, folks, that you're listening in, and you can correct me real quickly, John. Your main website being jgmovie.com, of course, 305mediagroup.org, networkermovie.com, which is, of course, the Networker we talked about. Networker also has a Facebook page, so does Sam.
TheNetworkermovie.com.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And
there's
then you,
of course,
Facebook
have your
page.
personal...
I'm sorry?
No, I was just going to say, there's a Facebook page called The Networker Movie for the movie itself, as well as
there's
Sam,
a website
too.
for TheNetworkerMovie.com. There's also a Facebook page for The Networker. There's a Facebook page for Sam.
Right.
There's a Facebook page for Act Naturally.
That's what I thought. You also have an IMDb profile. Your work's also on YouTube. You have a Twitter handle, which is @JGMovie. And you're also, of course, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Now, in the last 5 minutes I want you just to listen to this. These are reflections given to me by the actors and people that have worked with you. So you need to hear this because this is from people that you employ. And then I'll tell you my last little impressions. What your actors say about you, and one of the 4 top things that they admire so much about you is that you are loyal to every single person that you employ, that you have an impeccable eye for talent, meaning both in discovering them and then mentoring them and making them the best actors they can be. You give proficient direction, but even more importantly, you listen, and you listen well to the actors that you employ. And oftentimes you can get lost in conversation in the very best of ways possible, which I think is absolutely awesome. Now, in the last 5 minutes, which is all I have left because they're going to cut me off, I'm going to tell you, John Gallagher, what I think of you. And then before I forget to ask you, before I tell you what I think of you, I just want to throw this out to you. I'm opening a storefront in the next month, and I forgot to ask you this question. One of the elements of this very artsy boutique I'm opening is a theater. And I would love... I have to figure out a way to beg you to say, do you think can I show John Gallagher shorts in my theater area? Would that be okay? Can I do that?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
I'm going to heaven. Okay, well, that we'll talk about off air. So I'm going to real quickly give you my impressions. Oh, and by the way, oh, my God, I finally got my friend request accepted by your castmate, Sean Young. Cannot say enough about her. Love, love, love her. Throw a huge shout-out to Sean Young. Love her. But we're not talking about her. We're talking about you right now. So the last 3 minutes, John Gallagher, these are my impressions of you, and I will let you get off of air since you've been so gracious to give me so much time. One of the best things that I learned about you in the first 5 minutes of a telephone conversation that I had with you is that there is no pomp or no circumstance when it comes to John Gallagher. What you see is what you get, from the picture that you look on Facebook to any of the productions that he produces. Everybody that works for you, works under you, works next to you, works with you, has the same passion, the same purpose, and the same love for the craft that you do. You are not arrogant. You are not balls to the walls type, which is, for lack of a better term to put it. You embrace every single project with the same zeal and excitement and enthusiasm that you did the very first time 30 years ago. The fact that you love the silent film era just befuddles me to no end, and I think it's lovely and fabulous. There are not enough adjectives in the dictionary to describe how much I am in awe of you, how much I respect your work, but more importantly, you are an actor's director, and that is such a missing element in Hollywood today. I cannot even tell you. I would be the first one to stand in line for every production you'll ever do. I pray that you'll invite me to every film festival opening that you have.
Yes.
I'm bewildered and flattered, and I just am beside myself that you gave me this much time. I just cannot thank you enough. It's been lovely.
Well, my pleasure, Cindy. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Oh, you're quite welcome.
We'll speak very soon.
You're very impressed. I hope. Yes, definitely. I'll reach out to you. I'll get in touch with you, and we'll talk about all the movies
really
and all
questions.
that good stuff. Did I do okay? Really?
Absolutely. You
no lies?
Honestly, when you listen back, there are a couple of. you have some really good questions.
Yay!
You keep doing this. I want to hear you. I want to hear you interview Sean and Steve and yeah.
Oh my God!
And
right,
William.
I'll come live.
Frank
a live interview. Yes.
Yeah.
We could do like a live interview. I could do like a whole room full of stuff. We'll talk about that off air.
Come to New York and do a whole series.
Definitely. Heck yes, I would. I would love that. Well, we'll talk about it off there. I'll let you off.
Congratulations. Congratulations on the boutique.
Thank you, darling. I'll talk to you very soon.
Okay, all the best. Bye-bye.
All right, John, thanks. All right. Right? Can I even begin to describe it? I don't even know what to say. I'm just beside myself. It was like going back to old Hollywood for the last 2 hours. My huge debt of gratitude to John Gallagher, obviously, for his time. Huge shout out, like I said. We covered, oh my God, I don't even know how many people. Michael Madsen, William Forsythe. We've talked about Frank Vincent. We've talked about Vincent Pastore. We've talked about Steve Staniels. Got to throw out John Thompson's name. Holla. Huge holler to John Thompson. Absolutely love him as an actor, along with all the other fellow actors and friends that I know that are on the network or movie. Once again, one more time, the site for John Gallagher, jgmovie.com, 305mediagroup.org, thenetworkermovie.com. John Gallagher has a Facebook page, which is personal. He also has one for both Sam and the Networker movie. He has an IMDb profile. That's how you know I've been on the air too long. YouTube. His book is, of course, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And, of course, his Twitter handle is @JGMovie, period. So please do your best to support all of his endeavors. I'm very proud to hear him say that, yes, I can carry his films in my theater. Score! And don't forget, everybody, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. We're doing the Sisters of Grace, of course, talking about their website about climate control and change. So tune in tomorrow, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. I'm off to cook myself some dinner, have a glass of wine, and find out what the night brings to me. So we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. By singing dog. By goal.
I pronounce you.
By wedding ceremony.
Stop. At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.
What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. By singing dog. By goal.
I pronounce you.
By wedding ceremony.
Stop. At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.